How about now?
Yeah.
Oh, it's much better. Can we talk? Yeah, I've been very honest with you over, the 2 or 3 years I've been here about my process, and I think that's maybe as instructive as any prepared sermon. And lately, and this is not my swan song, so don't worry about that. Lately, I have been, in my own spiritual life or my own practice, recognizing some sense of urgency, which, we know there's no time in God time, but some impulse that's increased in me that the importance of us focusing on the truth. And as they say, when you get sworn in as a witness, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And what that means is that I feel that as your minister of record, which was the calling that Unity Worldwide decided for churches that are have become smaller and can't at the moment support a full-time minister, that a minister of record would be someone who would come in and stand in place as the spiritual guide for the ministry, that would assure that the ministry is still operating from its spiritual roots, and it's the unity roots. And so I come in under that mandate or under that opportunity, and it feels to me like this community that has been around for 50 years or more, something like that, that has a long and wonderful history of people growing spiritually. That for whatever time this community has left, and hopefully that's decades, that it become known in the hearts of those who are here as a place where people are awakening to the truth of who they are, more so than any other reason. There's lots of reasons to gather, and I don't disrespect those reasons, but I have to ask myself, is this really the best we can do? And I'm not being critical, but I see a lot of churches, and of course I've been a part of many congregations as a leader and as a congregant, and I see churches that seem to be losing their way. In other words, they start out, with a vision and a mission, which is a spiritual mission, that, we're here to, realize our divine nature, and that's why we gather. And then, over time, because there's a variety and a multiplicity and a diversity of interests and needs that human beings have, that the church can then begin to fragment itself along the lines of, well, why don't we do this and why don't we do that? And all of that, is fine, except if it sort of dilutes its essential mission and purpose. And so I'm feeling like we should become more focused on that mission of spiritual awakening. And so going forward, my messages will continue to be pretty much what they've been. But I want to contextualize everything that we do here in that mission, in that understanding, so that we're not stepping off of the notion that the motivation for everything we do here is to evolve our souls, or is to grow our spiritual understanding. Does that make sense? And I know that there's probably people watching out there, and I'll continue to share this in future weeks. So what I want to begin with today is show this little video. It's about 3 minutes long. When I was in Santa Barbara, which is my last full-time job as senior minister, one morning, what came through me was we asked the church, the congregation, the membership, to serve and to give and to, these are things you do. We ask you to do as becoming as being members here, but I'd never really contextualize it in the context of spiritual growth and development. And I think that anything that we ask you to do here, if it's only for the benefit of the church's financial well-being or its survival, is off target. It's missing the mark. And that if we do that, we've lost our way. And it feels to me like anytime we can course correct and we can bring ourselves back to asking people to do things only because it's for their spiritual well-being, then we are true to our mission. We are helping people realize their divine nature in and through these things that may seem relatively mundane. Does this make sense? So listen to this message, because the words that came through me when I spoke this felt very clear and right for not just for that time, but for all time. So we'll do that, and then I'll provide some spiritual background so that we can continue to deepen the sense of who and what we are. Okay? Like, there's no shoulds here. There's no you should do this and you should do that and you ought to, and if you're really a good member, this is what you would do. Because none of those things, if they are not building up your spiritual bank account, so to speak, then they're not for you. And we do know that there's certain valuable activities, and so we offer those here. So we know that when people are in service, we're not just getting people to do things for the church. We only ask you to serve because we believe and we know from our own experience and from the wide range of experience that people who serve have a grander sense of their own wholeness and the grander self that they are. And it isn't a diminishing experience. It isn't a transactional experience where you give something and someone else has more and you have less. It's when you're serving from the place of who you are. It expands your sense of who you are. In fact, it shines a light upon who you are. It reveals who you are in service. And when we ask people to give to this community, the financial giving, of course, we all know that we have financial needs. This doesn't operate, the manna from heaven is not fallen on this grass in the 4 years that I've been here. That there actually has to be, an inflow of this green energy we call money, in order for us to cover the expenses here. That's the worldly reality of Unity of Santa Barbara. But that's not the reason we would ask you to give. Because if we were to ask you to give that, it would only diminish your sense of your wholeness out of our sense of need. And it would trigger your sense of need. Then you would be diminished. Well, we ask you to give because of who you are. Because the nature of who you are is only expanded as you express your divine nature. That's always and shall always be the truth. So if your giving is not expanding you, then you have to look at that, saying, how can I heal from that sense of not enough? And of course, we offer many classes and workshops around healing that sense of not enough, so that our sharing and our giving and our serving here can be an expansive opportunity for your participation here. That everything that we ask you to do fits into our mission of helping you realize and express your divine nature. That's worth participating in. And we don't deserve to exist if we are not fulfilling our mission. We're not here just to thrive as a spiritual community in terms of organization. We're here to thrive as a spiritual community because the members of this community are thriving, and therefore the community thrives. Does this make sense? That we're not here to make this organization survive. We're here to grow the people. We're here for the growth of the people, for the spiritual growth and development of the people. And we trust and know that as that happens, that the life of the community or the well-being of the community is in divine order. That we can trust and let go of what happens to the community. But if we start focusing on our survival, then we are in trouble, because then we are abandoning our mission. Amen. I hope that came across. I think that It's about being authentic. I think we all have our own values, and I think the value that rises to the top for me is authenticity. And if there's one thing that's missing overall in religion and organized religion, is that just as when the founders of every religion started out from their own inspiration, in other words, something happened and they recognized this deeper truth, and it transformed them. And then they went and they shared it with, you know how it is when you have a spiritual experience or have a great restaurant. You've got to share it with everybody you know, right? And they started sharing it with people, and people were saying, well, how were you sitting when that moment happened? Oh, I was sitting like this, and I was breathing. And, well, how were you breathing? I was breathing like this. And what was your diet like at the time? And what were you saying to God? And so it's like there's a disconnect between the authentic spiritual experience and how we then translate that into spiritual practices. So if we're not pointing everybody back to the authentic spiritual experience that's seated in every one of us in our spiritual DNA, if we're not doing that, then what we're doing the opposite of that. We're practicing the absence of God instead of practicing the presence of God. And it's a lot easier for churches to have all kinds of fanfare and like amazing bands and eloquent messages and beautiful prayers that are singing through the rafters and great choirs and all of that. And that might be for you a way that triggers your spiritual experience. And if it is, then of course should be part of your practice. But I think so often we don't ask the question that needs to be asked, is this leading me back to the truth of my being? Is this revealing more of the essence of who I am? And if it is, then it belongs in our practice. It belongs in our churches. And if it's not doing that, if it's a distraction, if it allows us to just be what's that word? The ministers are supposed to appease the afflicted and comfort the afflicted. That's right. Is it just comforting your affliction? And we know that that part of us that is seemingly separate from the truth is always looking to change the landscape of our life in order to deal with this discomfort that we feel inside of ourselves. So we don't want our spiritual communities to take on this purpose that the world so easily offers us, which is, I'm looking for more happiness, and I'm looking for it in people and places and in relationships and in substances and in situations. That's the worldly response. That's what the sense of separation or the ego prescribes. And what does that do? Does that take us closer to our spiritual truth or farther apart? Is that the prodigal son moving out into the world to try to make himself happy when he feels bereft of his well-being? Or is that when the prodigal son turns around and comes back to its source? That's what I think, is the lens through which I would hope that we could make our decisions about how we show up in our personal lives, obviously, in our spiritual journeys that are individual, seemingly, but most importantly, in this context, in this community. Does this make any sense? Am I coming through? Okay. So we have this thing, and it's, and we like to talk about, the universe is abundant, don't we? We like to say that. But yet, if we're being really honest, a lot of the times, do we feel abundant all the time? Do we just always feel like there's enough and more than enough, which is sort of the promise of the truth? It's not. And why is that? It's because we are spiritual beings, but we're having a human experience, right? And the human experience, and this is not a sentence, it's not a life sentence. It's just, it's a variance from where our attention can go. When I'm identified as a limitation, in other words, we can affirm that the universe is infinite. And if the universe is infinite, that means that guess who's infinite besides the universe? Everyone, right? Everything. Because if the universe is infinite, then there's no room for anything that's finite, right? Because if there was room for something that was finite, then the universe would no longer be infinite. So it's sort of a mutually exclusive kind of a notion. So once we say the universe is infinite, that means, is there a possibility for lack in an infinite universe? Is it possible? I mean, just based on the notion, right? It's not possible that there be lack, but is it possible to have an experience of lack? And how is it possible to have an experience of lack? Anyone want to try to answer that?
We forget.
Say again?
We forget.
We forget, right. So we're not identified with the infinite nature of the universe. We're identified as a limitation. Yes? And of course, where does that come from? But we've identified, we were born in these bodies. And so we have this body, and somebody gave us a name, and they stamped it on this one, said this would be called a Larry, It's got a production date on it, but they don't stamp the expiration date. Fortunately, I don't think I want to know. But it's automatically assumed from the day that you were born that there will be a day that you will die. So does that sound infinite? Heck no. It's very finite, and you know about it from you don't know from day one. Your parents know about it from day one, and they will remind you of it as soon as you're old enough. And do you remember the day that somebody told you you're going to die someday and how traumatic that was? I remember, I thought it was my grandmother who said, well, Grandma's getting old and she's going to die one of these days. Oh no, Grandma, you're not going to die. And then she said, yes, and so will you. And I was like, oh my God. I needed therapy at 5, I was like, oh my God. But it was, it took many years later for me to be introduced to a thought system that allowed me to inquire into myself sufficiently to go beyond all of the false senses of limitation, body, mind, even thoughts, feelings, memories. All of those things are seen to be temporary, and you can begin to say, well, that's temporary, but isn't there some sense of your own being that has no beginning and no end? And that's really that's the spiritual question that we're all invited into. When someone says you are a spiritual being, you could just take that as a handle of, as an affirmation, or you can say, how is that true for me? And that's what self-inquiry is. That's when you are asked to look beyond the appearances, as Jesus said. He said, you are the light of the world. I am the light of the world, and you are the light of the world. Well, the light of the world has no expiration date. It didn't begin with birth, in the physical birth, and it doesn't end with bodily death. That sense of the infinite can come back to us when we truly, truly look inside and to see who and what we are. And when we come into contact with that part of ourselves, then we no longer see this lack that we see as human beings. We begin to recognize that there's no lack. If there's no lack in the universe, and I am an integral part of the universe, then there can be no lack in me either. So how do we, as a practical matter, how do we function in the world? Well, one of the ways to do that is ask yourself, how am I being with what I'm having? How am I being with what I'm having? Now, if you're getting what you want, which is those few moments out of a life, you are feeling what you're having is your abundance, right? But the challenge is, can you be with what you're having as your abundance when it's something that's uncomfortable or it's not what you want? Because if we're going to find our way back to the truth, then how we are being with what we're having, regardless of what we're having, needs to be that what I'm having is my abundance. So I know you've all heard this before. Your grandma told you, or your mom did, or somebody, but they said, well, you just need to be grateful for what you have. And, that's just sort of like just a nice thing to do. But it's actually a very enlightening perspective, because when you say, I am grateful for what I have, are you not acknowledging the presence of good, regardless of whatever presence there might be in your life? Are you not just opening your spiritual eyes to perceive and to see and to experience what your limited perception has prevented you from seeing? So when we open our spiritual eyes and we realize that in any given moment, whatever I'm having can be my abundance, if I come from a place of gratitude, either because this situation was going to make me stronger, or it's going to, open my spiritual eyes, or it's going to show me where I'm still not free. There's lots of ways to be grateful, even for difficulties in our life. And I know all of you probably have a story about that, where you shifted from feeling like life was against you to feeling that life, because there's one presence and one power, as we affirm all the time in unity, one presence and one power, God, the good omnipotent. That doesn't come in and out of our lives according to our life happening according to our preferences. Can we accept that? Do we know that whatever is true is not conditionally true? It's always true. So no matter what's going on in your life right now, you can be grateful. We can be grateful. I can be grateful. I can experience abundance, not the way the world sees abundance, but I can see it from the context that I know that the universe is abundant. I know that the universe is unlimited. I know that I am an integral part of the universe. I am not separate from the universe. If I was separate from the universe would no longer be infinite. It is physically and scientifically and spiritually impossible for you to be anything other than part of the infinite universe. Appearances to the contrary belie that truth. Does this make sense? If we trust in the appearances all day long, it'll never be enough. I don't care how much you get. And have you ever noticed where you said, if I just had 25% more, I don't care what it is, money, love, respect, I don't care what it is. We will always sort of raise our expectations up so that what we're having, even if it's more than we had before, will become our new level of not enough. Am I the only one? No. In fact, there was a study done, and they realized that 25 to 30% of most people in the United States, that most people in the United States live 25 to 30% above their means. And it doesn't, and so they say, and as soon as I get that 25% so that I'm not living above my means anymore, I will raise my expectations so that I am now that much above my means once again. Because that's rooted in this sense of separation from the truth of who we are. So it feels to me like the best thing that we could possibly do for ourselves personally, collectively, is unity in the Olympics, and for the world, because is the world suffering from any case of not enough? Could we not maybe trace every really major world problem to some sense of not enough land, not enough respect, not my religion is better than your religion. And if all of those strategies that are being played out now are all being played out externally, in other words, people are trying to go to war to get somebody else to give them what they feel that they don't have, what if that was all turned back on inside themselves and they were to realize that this is a spiritual crisis? It isn't a world crisis. It's this feeling that I don't have enough is something that I can fix here. And it doesn't even need to be fixed. It just needs to be revealed. Like I said in a little video, when you realize that who and what you are is all that you've always been seeking for in relationships, substances, situation, conditions, when you realize that that's what you've been looking for all along, then your search in the world comes to an end. And thus begins the only worthwhile use of your time, energy, which is the search within your own self. Not the self that was born into a body, but the self that you are, that is the transcendent self. It's God's infinite being that you are. And how is it that you're in a relationship to that? Well, the metaphors are abundant, but the one I like the most is the wave and the ocean. You are the wave in the ocean. And in a moment it feels like the wave as it rises up, it has its momentary unique form. But it never ever is disconnected from the ocean, is it? It's always ocean rising up in the form to become a wave. Just like you are infinite spirit, infinite love, infinite life, infinite abundance, forming for a moment, in this cloaking device called a body-mind, which has a temporary life to it and definitely has limitations on it. But behind that, you never lose your connection with the ocean. You never stop being the spiritual being that you truly are. It's not possible for you to lose your connection with life, because you are life expressing. This is the good news. This is why we should come here, in my view. Because anything less than that feels like in some way we're cheating ourselves out of the deeper realization that could literally heal us, save our lives, bring us back from the edge of sadness, depression, and certainly a feeling of not enough. So I wanted to share that with you today, and I'd love to hear how you react to that. So we can take a moment or two and open it up to any thoughts. What comes up for you when you hear that? We have a microphone if anyone wants to share. That's all right. Get back to you. Yeah, it will. It will.
It's about remembrance.
Remembrance.
Right?
Yeah.
And one of the things I've been working with, and what you're talking about, is like, I don't know where you've been this week, but I've been there too. And
Same place.
yeah. And it's like that when something arises or somebody's in front of you that's got you going, ick, about something in your life, it's like what I've started doing with it, and it's amazing, because it actually works, is going, oh my God, you're my reminder. And in that minute, whatever that is sort of dissolves. And I don't do it in the intent of that, but I go, oh, your reminder, this is who I am. I am that pure being, that innocent, original pure being who, and so are you, whatever the situation is that's happening. And so, I mean, that's a tool, if anybody wants to play with that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think, and we can still have our human reaction and still have a do-over a moment later. Like if it comes up like, and then a moment later you go, that person actually, is an opportunity to show me where I'm still not free, of my judgments or how I'm compartmentalizing truth and saying, well, it doesn't happen here, it's not existing here. Of course, it is, it's always there. But it can, when a person is not expressing love and light, it's because, they're believing themselves to be separate from it for that moment and projecting that on you. But it doesn't mean that they're not connected to the light. It just means in that moment, there's an obscuration of that vision and that knowing. So yeah, but thank you. And I think that just as soon as we try to find an exception, like, well, this doesn't apply, the truth doesn't apply here, that's a great reminder to say, wait a minute, how is that not true? Because the truth is the truth. It's just always true. Otherwise, this wouldn't be called true. Darn, right? Yes, please.
I came here today because I wanted to hear your message. I felt it was directed at me for the abundance. I have been feeling financial lack. And you reminded me of the mustard seed of faith. I need to have a little bit more faith that everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to turn out. So if I have to let go of some things, let it be. But I am going to be okay. I still have joy. I can still laugh. I have the power and the choices to be happy as is.
That sounds like reasons for gratitude, perhaps, just for
Yes, I write down, I have a gratitude journal, as everybody knows, because I say it all the time.
those. Beautiful.
And I always write down at least 3 things I'm grateful for. Usually it's the coffee in the morning, but that's okay.
Good start.
And as with gratitude comes appreciation. I don't always appreciate what I have. I want something new, something more. But then, as your message reminded me today, everything I have is just fine. And it's my choice to be happy with it. And happy with who I am right now. I will grow. So, okay. I'm talking
Good,
way too much, sorry.
No.
Thank you.
I think we can relate, and I think that's, we're all working our way back to this realization. Some are farther along, obviously, but if we can just chip away, kind of, maybe we have certain stuck places. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's, it's with money, maybe it's with employment or whatever it is, co-workers. But if we can we don't have to take it all on at once. We can say, I'm just going to sit with this person in my mind, until I can finally see how this person is not against me. They may be against who I think I am, but they can't be against who I truly am. That's where we remind ourselves of our spiritual essence. Nobody and nothing can be against your spiritual essence. I mean, you're invulnerable. But you can be against who you've identified being. And this is what, raising consciousness or finding that truer identity, that part of us that, wasn't born to a body, but is connected with all of life. And we can all access that within ourselves. And that's what meditation is, spiritual practice is, self-inquiry. It's working our way back. And I just wanted to say one more thing, and then I'll get to you, is wherever there's a gap between what you're having in your life and a sense of gratitude, that gap is your suffering. Think about it. You're having whatever you're having in life, and we know we don't have much choice over that. Some of it just comes, right? It washes up on your beach. It's like, oh, this is for you, apparently. So our reaction to what arises in life, if it's anything other than gratitude, then what we've done is we've created an opposite reaction, which is what? Resistance, right? Pushing it away. Rejecting. And the metaphysics of it is that you cannot reject something in your life without closing your heart to the truth. They can't coexist. You can't have open-minded receptivity to God, spirit, life, and at the same time be resisting what's occurring in your life. So you realize you're actually shooting yourself in the foot, so to speak, in your spiritual foot, when you are rejecting life on however it's appearing in your life. The more we can find some sense of either acceptance, and gratitude's even better, because I know this is going to lead to something better. If we can do that, then you are open to the divine. Your heart is open. Your soul is receptive. You're accessible to the Spirit. And really that's the X factor in most of our spiritual growth, is how receptive are we in this moment. Not even how faithful we are, because faith is almost an activity of the mind sometimes, because you can't see it. So you have to just I'm going to believe this. But if you can just be receptive, I'm willing to see the good here. I'm willing to see the good. That might just be enough to get your heart open, and then the Spirit, which is always present, can find its way into your heart. But when I'm in resistance and I'm like, I don't like this, this is wrong, this shouldn't have happened, this is a cosmic mistake, I know it is, then there's a closeness here, and then I'm not open to inspiration to see it another way. So I think that's something I wanted to say, and thank you for allowing me to add that. But good work. Someone else? Yeah, oh yes.
That was a powerful thing to say. There's a book, The Eye of the Storm, that
Yes.
speaks to that.
Yes.
Very difficult to read. I found it very difficult to read. And if somebody is coming at you, like I had somebody come at me and literally harass me and post on Facebook that I was trash. It's like, and then I come in here and I get to sing that I'm valuable, and I was taught that a lot of good things, like I'm a child of God, and that I know I'm somebody because God don't make no junk, and that kind of thing. And to be able to see the lesson in it, whatever it is, then I'll be okay.
Yeah.
But I love that. I don't know whether it's a metaphor or analogy. I always get them confused about the wave in the ocean.
Yeah.
I lost somebody, and I was grieving, and I was noticing raindrops on a canal. It was a tidal canal. And it was almost like he was trying to tell me that each lifetime is kind of like this. It hits the water, it expands, and it disappears. But you could see the tide coming in. And it was kind of like what it's really like is that a law of the universe. I guess what our little Earth and the Moon. There's much more to it that I couldn't see.
Yes.
And then Rumi, we're dropping in the ocean, and an ocean and a drop. And anyway, I'll leave that
Yes,
alone.
beautiful, yeah. And I think, however you want to say this sounds kind of anthropomorphic, but I've heard it said this way, and I'll just say it because it's usually that's the right thing to say it when it comes through. But somebody said one time to me, God loves us so much that it will appear in a way that we can understand.
And the gratitude is so, so important for us. Even our bodies, there's been a study where they've shown that our immune system increases by 50% just by doing a practice of gratitude 15 minutes a day. So for 15 minutes a day of just feeling pure gratitude for everything and everyone in our lives, we can get this incredible benefit, not only spiritually, but also physically. What a gift, what a gift.
Yeah, and it can be developed as a practice. And I think, a lot of people say, I don't feel like I'm sophisticated enough. I don't know all these spiritual practices. Well, do you know what gratitude is? You can teach this to a 3-year-old. And they can do a gratitude journal.
It's called journaling.
Journaling?
Yeah, joy.
Oh, journaling. Oh, yes. I thought you were being East Coast there for a minute. No.
Why this came up for me. One thing that I have that I practice, like you said, a lot of people, I don't have enough time. This is a long time ago, maybe 15 years ago. I started affirming I have more than enough time. And I really consciously did it. Anytime I started to say, oh, I can do that, maybe not now, but I'll do it later. But I never, ever felt, I never feel I don't have enough time to do anything. And a lot of people still have that. But that was a conscious thing I decided I wanted to break through and let go of. And I did it daily, every moment for a whole month, maybe longer, but I know it was a month, consciously saying I have enough time. My husband say, oh, I can't do that, I have enough time. I just look at him and smile because I know I have more than enough time.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, it can be anything. Time is one. We just feel that, oh my gosh, it's just not enough of that. But anything where we say there's not enough, that's not a universal truth. Unless we keep saying it over and over and over again, then it becomes a reality, right? But Denise and I, as both us being ministers, we left really good corporate jobs, 35 years ago, something like that. We made good money and we had a beautiful home and blah, blah, blah. And we decided to go into ministry, and both of our families said, oh, that's lovely. That's a very nice thought that you'd become ministers, but how are you going to take care of your family? You have children. You have a little one, and you got an 11-year-old, and the invitation was for us to buy into this notion that starting out ministers don't make very much money. Even seasoned ministers don't make much money. But we said that we are not going to operate. If we operate by the way the mind thinks, then we're not going to make this decision anyway. It made no rational sense that we would leave this idyllic place we lived, give up these 2 great jobs that we had. It was like financial suicide on one side of the ledger. The other side, though, if we didn't do it, it was soul death. You see what I'm saying? So really, in any given moment, we have to decide where we are going, what are we trying to grow, and what are we willing to starve, right? Sort of like, it's like that, the 2 dogs that are fighting, and which one's going to win? Do you know the answer? The one you feed, yeah. So you're going to have a voice all the time, not enough, not enough, not enough, not enough. And then over here it says, there is a royal abundance for everyone. Which one are you going to feed? And you say, oh, that's unrealistic. No, it's real. That's the truth. Royal abundance. This is what's illusory. So, anything else? Anyone else? Okay. Sandra.
Oh, I got a little emotional because, again, remembrance. It brought me back home to why I'm in unity. And I'll try to make this short and brief without going to all the background. I ended up in Miami one night after 3.5 hours driving. I had to get some new tires on my 1988 Honda Civic so I could go get a job. And it was a lot of events that left me out on the street alone, and from Lake Charles, Louisiana, back to Miami. And I pulled into this place in this huge city of Miami at a place called Perrine Tires, and his name is Jack Dolan, D-O. And I had a book in my hand, and I walked in, and I said, I don't have any money right now, and I'm needing to get work, and I can't, my tires are so worn out. And he looked at that book, and he said, what are you reading that book? I said, I just got it from somebody. He said, that's The Greatest Salesman by Og Mandino. I said, yes. He said, keep reading it, do what it says, and get your car in here, and I'll get you 4 tires. And he said, do you know who I have Christmas with every year? Is Jack Boland in Michigan.
Unity minister.
Every year with Og Mandino. And he said, so you get your tires and you'll pay me back. You just keep doing that. You'll pay me when you can. That was my first inkling of the universe answers your call. I mean, I said, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I was just learning about unity. I didn't quite understand the principles of this flow of energy. Money is energy and flow. And I was so stunned in that humongous city that I'm on the south side to walk into the one tire place out of millions in that city, to have this man recognize the book and say, oh, I have Christmas with Og Mandino and Jack Boland. And that's when I started this trip. Now, all throughout, till now, to the present, I go through these waves of fear, anxiety, and get scared, and then I remember. And then I go back. And your talk today, I needed this talk too today, really a lot.
I think we
because
can
I
all,
got
yeah.
there, and so.
We all need to
thank you
remember, yeah.
for Remembering.
Yeah, there's a Hindu expression that says, all this struggling to learn when all we need to do is remember. We have it in us, and I think that's what makes unity, that's what drew me to unity in the first place 30-some years ago, was that instead of a religion telling you, believe this, and all this stuff about, you got to believe this, and faith, and, and God out there, and all this stuff that just feels like it's a heavy load for your mind. And that if life throws you a curve, it's all going to come crumbling down. Unity says, you are divine. In other words, it is your true nature. We're not, you don't have to become morally acceptable in the sight of God. You are already that someone would say, you would only acquire if you follow all these rules and jump through all these hoops and somehow become worthy. No, take literally the words from, Genesis. You are the child of God. Or not you are the child of God, but you were made in the image and the likeness. And then Jesus, his baptism, you are a child of God in whom I am well pleased. And he said, I am this light, and you are this light. He didn't say, if you go through enough catechism classes, if you read enough books, if you finally, become worthy in the sight of some judging God. He said, no, it's you. It's what you already are. To seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. That's the message of abundance. And he also said, and this was in my notes, but I never got there. He said, for those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. And those who have not, even that which they have will be taken. Now that sounds like a really cruel thing, like the rich get richer, but what he's referencing, he was always talking about consciousness. Those who have spiritual abundance, consciousness, in other words, consciousness of the presence of God, more will be given. In other words, according to your belief that you believe in an infinite universe, you will experience an abundant universe. Because your beliefs, you can only see what you believe, right? So so developing our abundance consciousness is the best thing we can do for us to be able to deal with life on, all the vagaries of life, and realize that, however it's appearing right now, it's not the ultimate truth. And to know that it's on its way, that the revealing of the abundance of the universe, maybe it doesn't show up over here, it shows up over here. So, that's how Denise and I got through ministry. And, and we don't have a lot of money. I mean, we'd like to have more, of course, but, we have enough. And we live in Poulsbo, we own our own little house, and, we just feel real abundant and grateful. And it wasn't because we made all the right decisions. We actually lost some money in the market, and, some things went south, but we just keep looking for the good. And some days that's easier than others, right? But never give up, because it's always there. That's how I would leave it. Okay? So thank you all.